This week on Quadriga, refugee chaos. Can Merkel overcome a party rebellion? The Chancellor's liberal response to the refugee crisis has earned her praise across the world, but there are growing calls within her own party to stem the flow of new arrivals. A recent plea by her Interior Minister for a clampdown on asylum seekers caused further controversy. Thomas de Maizière challenged the Chancellor's prevailing policy. He suggested stopping automatic recognition of Syrian asylum seekers and preventing family members from coming to Germany later. Is the Chancellor still captain of her ship when it comes to the refugee crisis? And how much support does she still enjoy within her own party? Coming to you from Berlin, Quadriga, the international debate. Your host, Terry Martin.
Hello and welcome. She's become the go-to leader in Europe, brokering deals on everything from the Eurozone debt crisis to the Ukraine conflict. Forbes magazine says she is now more powerful than Barack Obama. But even Angela Merkel has her limits. Could she have finally met her match in the current migration crisis? That's the question we're exploring this week on Quadriga. We have three distinguished journalists with us in the studio to explore this question. It's my pleasure to introduce them now. Beginning with Eric Kirschbaum. He is an American journalist from New York. He works for the Reuters news agency in Berlin. He thinks the turmoil in Merkel's party, the CDU, about its direction on the treatment of refugees raises questions about possible intrigues behind the scenes. Andreas Kluth is Berlin bureau chief and Germany correspondent for the London-based weekly The Economist. He says critics are wrong to assume that Angela Merkel is about to be toppled. She remains the dominant figure in her party, in Europe, and in Germany, of course. Carina Edmunds is a correspondent for the German public broadcaster ARD and online coordinator for Tagesschau.de. She says it's unclear whether Merkel will keep her power. Though the Chancellor has shown resolve in an emergency, she says she has made many mistakes on the national and international level. Well, it has been a chaotic week in German politics. We've been getting mixed messages coming from the Chancellor and from her cabinet. Eric, let's start with you. Is this just a case of communication breakdown inside Chancellor Merkel's cabinet, or is it something more serious?
No, it's much, much more serious. I mean, Thomas de Maizière is an ally of Merkel. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's a pretty powerful figure in the cabinet, and he and the finance minister Schäuble are both staging a small rebellion right now and letting Merkel know, no, it's not okay what's going on. They're listening to what's going on in Germany. A lot of people in Germany are upset with the loss of control of the borders, that 1 million people are coming in this year. It's the seeds of a serious rift in the government that could be a big problem for Merkel.
Carina, Thomas de Maizière, which Eric was just talking about there, we're talking about the Interior Minister now. He announced further restrictions on refugees coming into Germany and the families of refugees that seemed to catch the rest of the cabinet off guard. Is there a strategy behind this, or is it really that the rest of the cabinet, including Merkel, didn't know what the Interior Minister is up to?
I would believe that, yes, that they didn't know it. I think de Maizière wants to show his opinion. He has been weakened by a political change in administration because the refugee issue is now part of the Chancellery. There's a new refugee coordinator called Peter Altmaier, who's very close to Merkel. De Maizière was supposed to be a close ally, but in this issue, obviously, he has a different opinion since many months. So, yeah, it's a bit nasty. It's absolutely not smart. And if I was Merkel, I would be really angry.
It seems nasty indeed, and one wonders whether there's some sort of subterfuge going on within the cabinet. Are we going to see a kind of a palace coup in the making? Is there mutiny in the ranks of Chancellor Merkel's government?
I don't think so. I don't think it is, because even the people who are criticizing her in her own party, in the Bavarian CSU, in the CDU, realize that there's really at the moment no alternative to her. By the way, that's kind of ironic to Germans, because alternativeless is a word that she once coined in the Euro crisis. It's, my policy is alternativeless. It's an ugly word even in Germany. And there's even a party called the Alternative for Germany that was founded with the sarcastic name to respond to that. But I think, ironically, we are now at the point where there is no personal alternative to her. They're talking about the finance minister, Wolfgang Schäuble, stepping in as an interim chancellor if she were ousted. But neither Schäuble nor de Maizière nor anybody else would be able to do anything much differently than Merkel. And so they would fail themselves. And in fact, I think both Germany and Europe would fail much faster.
But they want to send out some signals. De Maizière wants to send out some signals that Syrians can't bring their whole families here. They can't stay here for 3 years. They can only stay for 1 year. De Maizière, like him or whatever, he's sending that signal not only to the Syrians who are on their way to Germany, but to the rank and file of the CDU out there.
He is.
But still,
yes.
Still, Angela Merkel is the chancellor, and he has something like, we call it in German, Richtlinien, Kompetenz, Guideline, competence. Actually, these boys shouldn't go that forward in the public.
So why are they doing it?
I'll tell you why he's doing it right now. Because
in my view, at the moment, she is a weak leader. It's no good sign of her leadership.
Thomas de Maizière, if I might just jump in.
She should keep them quiet.
We would do the same thing, because for him, it's in part, at this point, self-defense. I mean, he's been dumped on, first as defense minister, now as interior minister. He has a very tough job.
He has an axe to grind, some would argue.
A few weeks ago, he was, in fact, demoted when Chancellor Merkel made her chief of staff, Peter Altmaier, the coordinator for the refugee policy inside the Chancellor's office. And that everyone saw that as a demotion. He's been under enormous pressure. He has to send signals to the Syrians and to his party, hey, I'm still here. I still have competence over something. He also has to worry about his own. But I don't think that amounts to a threat to her.
No, we wonder, because, I mean, just again, so our viewers understand what happened here. Apparently, the regulation, the Dublin II agreement or Dublin II system for determining what happens to refugees, saying that something that European leaders agreed on a long time ago, Chancellor Merkel suspended it. Now, de Maizière apparently reinstated this policy in October without telling the rest of the government. That seems like a breach of trust to many, if not just total chaos and breakdown within the cabinet. I want to put it to you, Karina. The Chancellor has now expressed her, quote, complete confidence in de Maizière as Interior Minister. She's used that phrase in the past, and it turned out to be the kiss of death. Is this the kiss of death for de Maizière?
It might be. I think in another situation where it wouldn't have been such an emergency situation like now, he might have gone already, because he didn't do a good job. He warned the whole administration too late, and the institution, the Bundesamt für Migration, the institution who is responsible for migration and takes all the asylum seekers' papers and all, they were informed too late. So he didn't do a good job, and maybe that's why he now wants to show that he's still in power. Okay,
well, we want to bring this discussion back to Chancellor Merkel herself. We'll find out what happens with de Maizière in the weeks to come, and I think there's a lot of drama left in that. Merkel has won a lot of praise for her position on the refugee crisis, extending her Willkommenskultur, as it's become known, to the refugees coming to Europe. But she has a lot of critics, too, and the barbs that are being hurled at her now, even from within her own ranks, are numerous and sharp.
Other countries, likewise, only provided guaranteed refuge for a limited time, and that's what we will be doing in future with the Syrians as well. We want to see a restriction on or reduction of the refugee numbers. Of course, we have to put a limit on families arriving later. Our intake capacities are not unlimited. It is therefore necessary to check each individual case and for people in Syria to be aware that not everyone can come here.
If we say families can follow without any problems, it's dishonest. We also have to ensure that accommodation can be provided, which is where reality comes in.
Yes, reality, a big slap in the face when it comes to the refugee crisis. Karina, has the Chancellor lost touch with reality by saying that, come to Germany, all refugees, we are not going to put any upper limits on?
No, she hasn't lost touch. She's just referred to our constitution, the law of the right of asylum, and we also signed the Geneva Convention on refugees. So there is she's right, and she's long-term thinking, and she knows that we have to take our responsibility. But of course, we as Europe, not only as Germany, behind all this, there's a big failure of European leaders, and this is also her failure. She's considered to be a strong European leader. Why didn't she prepare herself with Hollande and Cameron on this situation? It didn't come overnight. We had enough warnings since Lampedusa in 2011. Many deaths in the middle.
She was perceived as going out on a limb with this, and also going out with an idea in embracing the refugees coming to Europe without really conferring completely with some of her European colleagues. Many have said, as Andreas pointed out, that this was alternativeless, and that's what she said too, that it can't be. But I'm just wondering about Chancellor Merkel, what has happened to her during this crisis. She has morphed during this crisis from protective matriarch to political prey, as we're seeing this week for the first time, people beginning to question her authority openly. Andreas, is the Chancellor's power base beginning to slip?
First of all, she's metamorphosed in a number of ways. One from, let's say, perceived as hegemon over Europe, for instance, over Greece, as recently as this summer, to now the position of supplicant, going to the other European partners and wanting something and maybe not getting. That's a perception thing, and that is a striking difference. The other metamorphosis, I would say, is she went from a leader who, at least in Germany, was always considered to be leading from behind, as it was, or the politics of small steps, or muddling through, we would say in English, to, in this case, almost spontaneously forging ahead in one weekend of September 4th and 5th, and doing something that, well, spontaneous and that some people would regard as emotional, and therefore leading. So a lot of the people who've been criticizing her from leading from the back have turned around since and saying, well, now it's not okay to be leading from the front. I actually, is her power base slipping? We will see. It doesn't seem to me. I want to quote to you
There's a lot of dissent in her ranks, in the CDU ranks.
Yes, but specifically to that, by the way, the attacks on her in Parliament will not be coming from the left, which agrees with her policies. The SPD is torn internally and will not be ousting her.
Social Democratic Coalition.
It's only her own ranks, if you disregard the Alternative for Germany, which is outside of Parliament. But in her own ranks, there was a poll by Forza just a few weeks ago that on the question, for instance, should Merkel become Chancellor again, 80% of the CDU members said yes. 40% of SPD members said that their boss, Sigmar Gabriel, should become Chancellor. So that's the difference. And I don't believe that the CDU is ready to sacrifice her because they know, A, that they would lose elections without her, and B, that there would be nothing else.
They still think they might lose elections, but if it keeps going like it is, and the CDU is losing support in the polls, the AfD is back alive again with 7 or 8%. If it keeps going like this, and you hear politicians who have elections coming up like Lückner, they're starting to sound very, very nervous because a lot of CDU voters don't like what's going on, and they're unhappy about it. So this is certainly a problem for the CDU, mainly, that Merkel was a bit too open, and now people like Schäuble and de Maizière are kicking her shins, and they're getting away with it. That's the really remarkable thing. They're getting away with it. In the past, men who would do something like this to Merkel, they'd be history within a few weeks, but they're getting away with it, which shows she's weak. I think she's weaker than she's been in a long, long time.
So some of her closest allies in the party and within the cabinet, at cabinet level, are now beginning to kind of contradict her in public. We're also seeing this, again, what it seems to be a breach of at least administrative trust when your interior minister doesn't tell you that he has changed the rules, reversing your policy.
Germans don't like chaos in the government. They want their parties to be together and organized. So it shows it is a crisis.
The CDU, that's true.
Yeah.
I mean, the question is being raised in the mind of German voters about the competence of the leadership in this crisis. I mean, Chancellor Merkel won a lot of praise, as I was pointing out at the beginning, but right now we're seeing a lot of people standing up in public and saying enough is enough. We don't even know how many refugees are in the country. This just made the headlines that the government has admitted they don't really know how many are there. Chancellor Merkel is having to turn around now on her policy. I'm just wondering, Eric, is this an avalanche?
Well, that's the word that the finance minister used last night, an avalanche, and he said avalanches could be caused by people who are bad skiers, sort of making another jibe at Merkel. We all know Germans love control. They love an orderly society. They love things that are nice and orderly, and everything is organized. And right now, with 1 million people who've come in the last 2 or 3 months, they feel there's a sense out there that they're losing control of their country. And that's something that's really upsetting a lot of people, and that's really hurting Merkel's party more than any other.
Okay, just before we move to our next session, how dangerous is this situation for Chancellor Merkel? Corinna, how do you read it?
Well, it is dangerous. She knows that. At the end of the day, people will look whether she has managed the situation, and the question is, does she still have the situation under control? Both her government, but also the numbers of refugees and how to integrate them. I think at the moment the government is the bigger problem. If they would just stay together, step back and just say, okay, we're going to manage. We take some time, but everything is on the way. We are one of the richest countries in the world. We can manage the situations. All experts from economy say that. And the local leaders do a good job. Of course, they are overwhelmed, but
interior ministers in the federal states are beginning to rebel a bit.
Yes, of course. That's part.
For having to implement these policies.
This is clear. That's it's absolutely clear that it's the maybe most difficult situation in the last 20 years for current politics.
It's a tremendous challenge, and many are saying that the biggest challenge since the Second World War.
I think from Mrs. Merkel to the people criticizing her, that the only real lever to reduce the inflows of refugees is probably somewhere near Turkey, between Turkey, Syria, and Egypt. Right now, if you look around at Europe, where is a leader of Mrs. Merkel's stature? If there's anybody, I'm not saying she can do anything, but if there is somebody who can work with Turkey and the surrounding countries to have a solution that keeps more refugees there, then it's still her.
There is a big foreign policy dimension to this, and as we mentioned at the beginning, Chancellor Merkel is the go-to leader in Europe when it comes to addressing these questions. It does, however, bear repeating the question, where exactly does Chancellor Merkel stand on the refugee crisis? You mentioned, Andreas, that German voters don't like chaos. Well, the Chancellor's position on the refugee crisis has been moving over time. On one hand, she is very generous, very welcoming towards refugees, but she has been playing a bit of policy hopscotch lately.
The Chancellor with teenage refugee Reem on German TV in July, a performance dismissed by many as cold-hearted.
You know yourself, in Palestinian refugee camps in Lebanon, there are thousands of people. And if we say you can all come, and you can all come from Africa and everywhere, well, it would be too much for us to manage.
In early September, tens of thousands of refugees left Hungary, headed for Germany. The Chancellor's open-door policy earned her the nickname Mother Merkel.
If we now have to start apologizing for showing a welcoming face in emergencies, then that isn't my country.
But that face is no longer quite so welcoming. The German government now wants to deter new arrivals and is reinstating the Dublin regulation for treating Syrian asylum seekers. That means being sent back to the EU countries they were registered in. So which Merkel face is the real one?
Not a lot of consistency there, Andreas. Do you think we'll see Germany now backing away from Willkommenskultur? Or could Merkel flip again?
I beg to differ that there is this alleged inconsistency. What happened, I watched this event that we just saw that was this summer. The girl's name was Reem. She has cerebral palsy. She was born in a refugee camp. And Mrs. Merkel, I thought when she broke down crying, that little girl showed empathy and then explained very professionally and soberly that no, Germany cannot accept anybody, which is, as a chancellor, what she had to do. Twitter then called her cold-hearted when I thought, no, that was her job. I thought the public exaggerated that. September 4th, September 5th, when she allowed the trains from Hungary to come in, everyone overshot in the other direction and said, oh, she's bursting open the borders. She wasn't doing that either. I believe she was trying the whole time to walk a fine line, and that actually the public, this is what it's like to be chancellor, exaggerates everything that comes out of her mouth. So I don't see an inconsistency there.
Where does she stand now, though? I mean, now she's saying, okay, well, the interior minister is right. We do need to reinstate the Dublin arrangement that requires refugees to be registered in the country where they first entered the European Union, which effectively means Germany could send refugees back. It's a kind of pushing in the other direction.
And is it doing that? Because look at what does it mean?
In practical terms, it's very difficult to do.
In practical terms, where do these refugees enter the European Union? It's in Greece, which is the centerpiece of the other crisis we're having, and is floundering and foundering. So is Germany really now, I mean, Mr.
see them sending them
going
back.
to send them back to Greece?
They can only send back if they have been registered in these countries. But
Germany is saying they don't even know.
Usually they are registered here. So it's a kind of, what we see there, it's a lot of symbol politics going on.
Yeah, but it's signals to the CDU voters, and that's the intention.
Yeah. Maybe.
The question remains, which direction is she going to go with this? Is she going to pull back and say, okay, there's been so much of a backlash now that we have kind of reached the point where we can almost say the boat is full?
I think she's going to have to. I don't think she anticipated the rest of the EU would drop the ball the way it has. I don't think she thought all the refugees were going to land up in Germany and Sweden. So I think she's being forced by her party to make a slight retreat here. And knowing the way Merkel does these things, she makes a U-turn without you really noticing it. She'll make a bunch of small steps over a couple of days or a couple of weeks with her comments, and all of a sudden she'll be saying the exact opposite of what she said a few months ago. She's not going to close the door on the refugees, but she's probably going to be pushed along with Schäuble and de Maizière to accept some of these bitter pills, at least send some signals that Germany's not going to be able to take 1 million refugees in every year for the next 10 years.
The problem is, as you just pointed out correctly, they're all signals. They're signals to the CDU, they're signals to the Syrians and to the refugees in Jordan. Don't come here. But they're just signals, because in numbers, this will not make a difference. We don't know the numbers, and the government today admitted that they don't even have numbers anymore. But they will not be sending refugees who are coming here back to Greece, where they were registered.
That's clear. Unfortunately, we're about out of time.
Yes.
And I wanted to get your opinion, Andreas, on the key question that was asked at the beginning of the program, and that is basically, is the refugee crisis Chancellor Merkel's Waterloo? Could this migration problem lead to the Chancellor's downfall? I'd like to get a response from all of you before
Waterloo was a great moment for the British and the Prussians, so, whose side are you on? No, I believe, unfortunately, I have to say I am very pessimistic for Europe. I think Europe has failed, is failing in front of our eyes to deal with this. And I think these various crises, Euro crisis, Russia crisis, Brexit, will come together with the refugee crisis, and Europe will fall apart. Do I think Merkel personally will be ousted? No, I still think she will survive.
Okay. Eric?
I think it's very dangerous for Merkel. I think it could be a really big problem for her in the next couple of months if she doesn't get on top of it and get in line with her party. I don't think she'll be kicked out or forced out anytime soon, but she's been around for 10 years now, and I can imagine she might not make it to the 12th year. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think it'd be a total shock for some people if she's not around 2 more years.
Well, let me push this one step further. If Merkel maybe is not looking endangered at this moment, what about the other members of her cabinet? Could we see a reshuffle coming up?
I would have thought that would have happened by now, or would be happening, but it's not, and that just shows that she is a bit weaker than she was a week or two ago.
Karina, how do you see things playing out as we go forward? And we know that the statistics suggest that everybody wants to see Chancellor Merkel back in power. Even the opposition don't really see an alternative at this point. Could this mean the end of her political strength, however?
It's an open-end question, absolutely, but it depends on so many levels of international affairs, foreign policy, how they come along with the just daily operative questions.
2017 she'll be back in the saddle.
2017, it has become more difficult for her than some months ago to focus on 2017 and the next Merkel government. It's more critical now.
We're going to have to leave it there. Very critical indeed. I want to thank all of you for being with us this week on Quadriga, and do check us out on the internet at dw.com. Hope you'll join us again next week.